Hey, Kate, thanks so much for joining me on a well-designed business today.
Hey, Luann. I can hardly believe I'm here. This is like very long and exciting journey for me. I think I was telling you before that I started listening to your podcast during COVID, and it was such a lifeline for me. And I've just learned so much from you. You've been an amazing mentor. So I'm really happy to be here with you
Oh,
today.
well, it's so nice to hear that, and of course, um, we did our year-long chairman of the board coaching together, and that's how we really, really got to know each other. And um, it's it was such a special chairman of the board in my mind because you, Kate, I never said this to you before, but you were like this onion. I was like, "Wait, you that? Like, wait, you teach at Columbia? Wait, you wrote a major, huge book in I have it in front of me, Interior Landmarks, Treasures of New York, and we're gonna link it in the show notes." I mean, it was just on the one level, we're consistently picking your business apart. But on the other level, you're like, well, yes, I have a contact from when I used to be the Historic Preservation Society XYZ. And I'm like, girl, you are something else. Like,
No, it's one of those things. I'm not sure modesty has always served me well, but I spent a lot of time in academia. I taught at Columbia. I was in the nonprofit world, and when I tooted a horn, it was always for something else besides
mm,
myself. So going into business and realizing, no, I'm promoting myself. It doesn't mean that I don't care passionately about what I do. It's just that I am the vehicle for getting that done. And so I need to talk more about myself and let people know, my experience and what I have to offer.
it's so true because thinking back to those first couple of sessions in chairman of the board, I'm making a joke, but it was true. And I was like, whoa, wait, there's some like legit cred here that you are leaving off the table that really informs and, exemplifies how you are this expert in this field. And it's for you to say, not sure modesty has always served you. I can see and I can remember it being not a very it wasn't a coy thing. Oh, I don't want to say that. It was like you genuinely did not have the muscle to say, I am Kate, hear me roar. Like that's like you just didn't get in line for those muscles when you were born. Like,
Well,
right?
no, I mean, this whole, being in business for myself has really been a process of learning how to put myself forward and be comfortable being in front of the camera. I've started doing videos and online webinars and interviews and things like this, which again, I used to do it before when I was doing historic preservation advocacy for landmarks in New York City. But again, it was always about the building or the neighborhood. It wasn't about me. And so I have such a vivid memory of our first session together where I came in with all of my notes about my business and, how I was structured and the services that I offered. And I showed you a picture of a project that I was working on. And you were like,
Remember.
what is this? And it is still this 150-year-old train station in the Hudson Valley of New York that has been abandoned for almost 100 years. So it is you said, is this a shack?
Shock.
What is this? And
Like
I'm like,
this is your
no,
design.
this is my project. And it was just so eye-opening to me that you looked at this and you didn't see what I saw. And so I had to take few steps back and say, oh, wait, I have a vision. I'm looking at this and
Yes.
I'm seeing what it could be. And fortunately, I have a client on that project who also sees what it could be. So we're like peas in a pod. I mean, she's wonderful. And, on that project, we've been able to bring in, a preservation architect, an interior designer, a structural engineer. Like the team has just been amazing. But realizing that, oh, I have to explain this. Like this is, and and just, I think that it took you 2 minutes to understand what I was talking about, because I realize I do have kind of this infectious enthusiasm about these things. And you were like, whoa, this is a whole other
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And when I came to you, I had learned so much from your podcast about interior design business, and it was
Hmm.
so helpful to me, even though I would never, well, I'm not going to say that. I did kind of think of myself as maybe what I do is interior design.
I remember that was the big gap that you had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
and and my husband, who, full disclosure, is the president of the New York School of Interior Design,
By the
he would
way.
yeah, by the way, he would say to me, "Kate, you're not an interior designer." And
See?
I would get all like ruffled
Oh,
and
you
just
never
say,
told me David said that.
no, I would say, "What?" And so I was interpreting it as him saying, like, you lack
You're
that
not
skill.
serious. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're not
exactly.
serious.
And no, I realized, I did realize eventually he was saying, no, you're something else. You're something
Yes.
altogether different. What you
Yes.
offer is not interior design per
Right.
se. It's adjacent to interior design. And
Yep.
again, I've learned so much just about how to structure a business based on, how
Yeah.
interior designers do. But I do something else, and it's something that complements interior design. It complements design in general. I think it has. I've learned to see it as having value in its own right.
Yeah.
But that took, those kind of aha conversations with you, and with other coaches that I've had
Yeah.
to really get perspective on.
Well, and the thing is, of course, I also remember the moment first looking at the quote unquote shack, the infamous shack that we've referred to many times in the last couple of years. Which,
I,
by
I,
the way,
I
if
I
your
know my
client
client.
ever, I
She's
know,
listening right now.
no, no, right. Like, and I was just gonna say, and your client, like, no, all cred, all respect, and all the things, because you guys do see something very, very different. And it's amazing that you both see something very different. And she's willing to invest in you and in this property to do this. So it became our shorthand for it, right? Like it really wasn't meant as disrespect and never was. But the thing is, I remember because, and the thing is, I wanted to say about this conversation, at its heart, this conversation isn't about your and my experience in chairman of the board. Of course, that's going to be illuminated through it. But at its heart, this conversation is that finding your Fred Burns only and being clear on it. And what I remember was it was about our third session. And I kept sending you away with homework to do, and you were working on your services and what they would be. And every time you came back, we're looking at like putting these things in a box, because at that point there was a struggle to, look, this kind of a project could have a design to it, but then it also could have project management, and project management for a 150-year-old, 100-year abandoned facility is not, a normal timeline. You have no idea what you're going to run into, like as you were explaining to me, right? And so we're trying to quantify the different services. And I can remember at one point, 2 or 3 into it, because you kept saying an interior designer who specializes in historic places. I was like, so Kate, are you gonna, like, once, let's just say you get this done and you do the thing where you go back and you get the electrical in and you get the plumbing in and you do all of the technical stuff, are you, whether it's this particular property or an historic home, are you wanting to pick the sofas and the tables and the moldings and all of that? And you're like, well, I mean, I could, but I don't really want to. And that's when I was like, okay, sweetie, no, I'm done having this conversation about I'm an interior designer who specializes in historic homes, because by then we were like 3 or 4 conversations in, and each time you would tell me about the complexities that you face in these kinds of projects that are not your garden variety complexities. It's like, I remember in that one space you were like, for example, in this space, we have to put this picture in the show notes, like we have to put this in Instagram for this day, because I remember when you said, like, for example, this one space, XYZ, the vision is to this, but like Lou, when this space was built, there was no such thing as heat and running water and all of this stuff. And there's no basement to put a furnace in, and there's no room to put a furnace in the existing space. So these are challenges. And I'm like, oh, these are not interior design challenges. I'm like, no, Kate, no interior designer has to figure out, like, how do we put electricity into something, right? And so, and that's not to say that no interior designer ever had to not figure that out. But I remember saying to you, listen to me. If you are going to position yourself with any language to interior designer, you are going to create a situation where an interior designer who has an opportunity to do the designing part of a historic project that you don't want to do, you're going to create a dissonance and they are not going to want to bring you in. You need to be no competition, architect, landscape architect, contractor, Kate, and interior designer. Like, you're a different expert in this lane. And I never knew that David said that to you, but that is what he was trying to say to you. He just never finished the full sentence to you, right?
Right,
But
because I
he
was
knew
all
all
over
along.
him.
Right. But he and maybe he didn't have the full clarity. Like when I like when and of course I had the clarity came to me. I'm not a genius. It came to me because we had 3, 4, 5 conversations about it, right? Our first chairman of the board was a 5-hour event. Like we had 5 hours, then a month later we had another hour, then a month later so by the time we have 3 conversations, we're 7, 8 hours in.
Mhm.
And I was like, And that was when it turned, right? Now all of a sudden it was like, I'm like, oh, let me connect you with Denise Winokur up there in the Hudson Valley. Let me connect you with Jessica Madison up there in the Hudson Valley. These are the other legs on the stool. And when an interior designer, a real interior designer who does that for their lead as their profession, has the opportunity to do a historic home, you're the expert that they call in, no different than they call in an architect or an electrician or a GC. And then we could get working on your business. Remember how like
Yeah.
that was just like aha, 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 right?
Well, I think that that was it because I felt like I needed to be all things to all people. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as it had anything to do with a historic building, I could be your designer, I could be your GC, I could be I could connect you with all the trades, all of that. And I thought, well, and I remember this too. I think David once asked me, well, what's different between you and a GC? And I was like, I don't know. And I thought, well, what am I? And so I think that that question about, well, if I'm not an interior designer and I'm not a GC and I know I'm not a structural engineer and, all of these other things, what am I? And it was, this real like existential moment where I thought, okay, um, I have to figure out my own lane, and
Yes.
also having the confidence that you know, so often in my early years in business, because I've been in business for 7 years now. So in the first few years, I mean, I was just doing kind of one project a year where I really was doing everything for people.
Yeah.
I was running around and picking up supplies and coordinating all the different, the plumber and the electrician and, filing the building permits and just doing everything. So, I mean, I know how to do all those things. And again, I think it comes from my nonprofit background where, it's like you just,
Every
what,
all hands on deck.
yeah, exactly. You wear every hat because there's no room for specialization. And just having the confidence that, okay, there are clients out there who really don't want one person to do everything. And, they're not well served by somebody who's just scrambling around, like running, with a chicken, like a chicken with their head cut off. Like, I really need to focus and deliver to people, you know, the service that is going to be of most value to them that I am most expert in, which
Yes.
is the historic rehabilitation strategy piece,
Yes.
because it's just the insight that I have that, and then that's the other thing is you helped me to kind of break out what I do. It's not just like, here, I'm going to help you rehab your house and let's just get started.
Right.
It's like, no, let's have a standalone site consultation where I will walk through all of the things that I see. I see these are the character defining features of your house. This is the style. This is the date of construction. This is what's special about it. These are the features that no matter what, it's if you make this train station into a house, you still have to preserve these features because they are what make this place special. If you get rid of those things, you might as well start over.
Right. You
So,
didn't
so
keep it preserved. You didn't do the historical
yeah,
preservation part.
that's not preservation. That could be something really
Yeah.
beautiful, but you
Right.
don't go into a 19th century house and gut it and make it into a loft that could be in Soho. Like
Right.
things have character, and we have to kind of, if preservation is our goal, we need
Right.
to know how to respect those things. So those are insights that I can provide, and those are not things that every interior designer
Well, that
understands.
was the thing that was happening in our conversations. I have to say, like, that's what got me to the point where I was like, Kate, stop. This is not what you know. Like, stop doing this and stop adding services and adding things that you can do. To me, it's like a regular designer. Gosh, there's no disintended, but an interior specialist designer who is now going to paint the rooms for the people because they know how to paint. Yes, you can know how to GC the job, but like the more you could specialize to what you just said, your expertise that no one else on the job can do. What is the Kate Lane? And I remember another aha for me in really like riding you a little hard on this was I remember when I was like, well, what is like when you were just describing, like, this is a feature that would have been there in 1910. So that feature has to stay. And I was like, well, what does that mean exactly? And this was the aha moment. I don't know if you remember this. You were like, well, for example, this particular home that we're working on right now, originally the home would have had the windows that have the ropes in it. Now, I'm going to tell you what, I'm old enough to have seen windows with ropes, and nobody in their right mind that I've ever met wants the windows with the ropes. Okay. And so I was like, wait, so you're telling me that when you do a historical preservation project and somebody along the century has changed them to tilt-in windows, you are going to rip them out double, like what do they call them, double pane thermal insulated. You're going to rip them out and put in windows with ropes. And you were like, yes, ma'am. I'm like, Kate, okay, we are going down a whole nother crazy lane. And that's where I like, to me, that's when I started to see you truly as the interior designer's partner, because it's, to me, on a so much more detailed knowledge, experience base. But I understood it from being an interior designer's partner in window treatments all these years. It's like, look, you have the whole job on your hands. Let me work in concert with you to get the window treatments right. You don't have to understand Somfy motorization or Lutron motors. You have to understand it. You just have to tell me you want it. Like, I will figure it out and I will give you the decision, this or this. If that, then this. But you don't have to go and be an expert. And that was when I was like, Kate, you are the designer's best friend. You are the designer's consultant. Don't muddy your waters. Just go right up to the top. And that was also when the conversation started to come out how you taught preservation and at Columbia, and that you weren't at and I'm like, oh, okay, it's not even like this is a passing little hobby interest here. You have an entire dedicated career to being a leading expert in this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was also, I mean, Luann, windows are the hill that I will die on. So when you start talking about ripping out original windows with ropes, like I'm going to put the gloves on. So so oh yeah, and I would definitely, I would fight to the death for to preserve windows, but I also realize that I am the last person you want to ask to design your window treatments. So
Right. That's what I'm saying. You got to get out of the pretty lane, right? You're the technical lane. That was the aha, right?
and so much respect to interior designers, because
Yes.
because I have tried and failed. I now know what I do not know and why people go to get, 4-year degrees in interior design
1000%.
or
Or
work
come
for
up their own
decades,
to
yeah,
get their
in the field,
experience.
because there is so much knowledge
Yeah.
and I think that, my own sense of insecurity and inadequacy when it comes to not having those skills, I just had to get over it and really lean into what it is that I do know. And I think that, all those years fighting for New York City landmarks, and I mean, it was all about advocacy.
Mhm.
And and I've learned to transfer those skills to what I do now, which is advocacy for buildings, for
Yes.
my clients, for
Yes.
these character defining features. And I'm a team player. I love being part of a team. But if a contractor tells me it's impossible, we can't save those windows, I will chain myself to them physically. I mean, if that's what the client
The
wants.
client
I mean,
wants, right.
at the end of the day, we serve the client, but,
Yes.
fortunately, I've been able to work with clients who come to me specifically
That's why they come to you.
because they know that they have something special on their hands. They desperately don't wanna mess it up.
Yeah.
And so I am really there to help them do the right thing. And it's wonderful because it's such a contrast to what I did in New York City for all those years, where I was telling the richest, most powerful people in the world what to do with their buildings, and they had no interest in listening to me. And now people come to me because they really do want to hear what I have
It's
to
their
say.
passion to do
And
it.
then when I can connect them to the right interior designer for their project,
Yes.
the right architect, structural, all of the different trades, the team members, that's just the best of all possible worlds. And and if somebody starts with an interior designer and they tell that interior designer, this house is really special, I really want to preserve its integrity and its character, and they, think, well, yeah, I see that, but I took one class in historical styles and I'm not really sure what we're dealing with here, or this is just out of my experience, dealing with something like the shack or like the some uh, some special building from the 19th century. They can call me, and
That's the thing.
I can consult, I can be part of the team, whatever it is, whatever
Mhm.
role needs to be played to kind of make sure that the design fulfills the vision of the client, if historic preservation matters to them.
Right. And that was like, that is the summation of the aha is that we both know that there are interior designers out there that have loyal clients that they've done maybe their primary home for, and now they're going to go out to the country, or maybe their primary home is going to be this historic home, and the client really does care about that, and the designer needs, like, to your point, like, you're not going to pick the tile and the lighting and all the thing, but the designer, like, needs to understand if it's really is that advocacy now, because if the designer is advocating for the client in wanting to be true to the historic era of the home, and their GC is like, sorry, lady, the windows have to go. Now you are that expert that the designer can rely on to say, could you say it in builder speak and historic speak why these are not going, right? As opposed to, I'm just standing here saying we don't want it to go. And
Right.
you also have the resources and the experience to say, in the past we've accommodated by doing this or blah blah blah. It really is no different than if a designer is presented with, okay, we opened that wall and all the electrical wiring is 100 years old and it's got to be done. No one would expect the designer to know how that electrical gets done. The designer goes and hires the expert and they advocate for the client, like, we want ceiling fans everywhere, we want dimmers. And he's like, okay, I'm the electrician, I'm going to rewire the whole house and figure this out for you, right? So what I want to also say about it is, so the message here is, you all have a lane. You do. You have, when you're sitting on, a full career of all of this legitimate cred with this book, with all this stuff, and we're still like, well, am I this? Am I that? Where do I fit? It really is being open to exploring with that, like here you've got David saying it, but you didn't hear it, right? And and you even had worked with Rachel Bozick before working with me, and I know Rachel pinpointed it, but you didn't hear it right. Like it's always, I think what it is pushing yourself on, because what I want to say is the twist, not the twist, the turn. I literally could see the turn in you, Kate. Like it was 2 or 3 months in, this clarity comes, and then you were just like this train going down the, like, I see it. This is this service. This is this service. And this is the value of this service. It was like a fog had lifted off of your head. And previous conversations that were like, I'm not sure, I don't see it, were like, this is what I'm thinking now, but how do I, this is what I'm thinking to approach this. And now it was like, now it was almost like I say a lot of times with the chairman of the board, it's like holding a racehorse back. It's like, okay, you can do all the things, let's go here. Okay, let it know, right? And it was such a pleasure to see almost like the burden lifted off of you when the clarity came, and it wasn't like the work was over. You still had, now you had a lot of work to do, but you had a direction for it, right? Do you remember that feeling? I feel like that was like December-ish of that year, right? We started in August, September. I feel like November,
Mhm.
December, you were like, I'm getting it. I got it. I'm going to do this. And that's what, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, the dam kind of broke because I stopped worrying about stepping on people's toes, like you
Right,
said. I mean,
right.
it wasn't like I was, trying to elbow my way into the interior design world. I had something of value that I wanted to share with people. And so I started, making appointments and having coffee with people and sending them, just really networking in a way that I'd never networked before because I wasn't worried that I was trying to compete with anyone.
Right.
I really felt like I wanted to learn more about what other people were doing to see how it intersected with what I do
Mm-hmm.
and how I could be helpful to them. And
Yes.
then I just, it was like a snowball. I just started learning so much from other people. And, you know, I have to say, I mean, this is a testimonial right here. Coaching works.
Yeah.
Coaching
Yeah.
is so important for
Mm-hmm.
anybody who is, you know, trying to do anything important. And, but I think you have to, like you said, you have to hear it multiple times,
Yes.
often from multiple people.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's no such thing as an overnight, turnaround like
Right.
this. I mean, I could tell you, a year after we started coaching together when we were wrapping up, and I was sort of like, oh my God, I can't believe it's over. Like, what am I going to do now? And even just, then that was what, 6 months ago, something. And I've grown so much since
I
then
know.
just because of, the directions that, that I've sort of been set on. It's
Yeah.
always, it's like sailing, like you tack and there's no straight line. You just
Right.
kind of
Yes.
you figure it out as you go. And I think, I've finally learned at this advanced stage of my career that I should give myself permission to do that. That it's, I think when I came to you, I said, well, I'm about to turn 50 and I feel like I don't have that much time. Like I really
Yes.
have
I
to get
remember you saying that.
I have to get this going. And I do feel urgency about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I do feel like, yes, I spent a lot of time doing other things, and now I really feel like I've found the thing that I could do for the rest of my life
Good.
happily. But I've gained perspective to feel like, okay, well, it's not like I have this short runway that I have to get it all done in 1 year. Like
Right.
I fully expect if we had the same conversation 6 months or a year from now, I would be in an even better place, as
Yes.
happy as I am now with my business and as, confident as I feel in many ways. I feel like there's still so much room for growth. And I'm excited about it.
But that's the great thing about you, Kate. It's like you take an element of growth and aha, and then it's, you're not sitting there admiring the observation of it. You're just like, okay. So, and then you immediately always see the new gap that aha creates. Do you know what I mean? The best way, you's like, okay, now I know that, but now that it's almost like now with this more information, like the level of the next level goes deeper and broader too at the same time. And it's funny because I know that working with Rachel was very beneficial to you. It just for lots of other things came from it. This one slice we have, but then it's since then Rachel impacted you again. And so when we were finishing up, I remember Luann Live was about 3 or 4 months away. And we or maybe 2 months after we finished up. And I remember, I guess in our last session, I was like, oh, are you going to come? And you're like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like if I really should or I shouldn't. And I remember, one of us, both of us, whatever. I know I always say it when my chairman of the board's off board. I'm like, who's the next person in your ear? Because I believe you do have to keep going on. We all keep going on coaching to your testament to it. And I said, if nothing else, maybe come here. Like who's maybe one of these persons is the next person in your ear. And what I love is you said that when Rachel was on stage again, you had a new layer of aha from her presentation. So many
Right.
people had ahas from
Yeah,
Rachel's
yeah,
presentation, right?
yeah. No, I mean, she's just phenomenal. I mean,
She is.
she was because I heard her on your podcast, I said, "That's who I need." I mean, this is like 4 years ago, something like
Yeah.
that. And so I did work with her, and the fact that I walked up to her at Luann Live, and, we had emailed back and forth in the time, but it had been a long time since we'd seen each other, on a Zoom call or anything. I tapped her on the shoulder, she turned around and just gave me this huge
Yep.
hug
It's
and
Rachel.
just was like, "Kate, my darling," all of
Yeah.
this, and it was just like, we were old friends, which, I
Yes.
do
That's
feel
how
like
she
that.
is. She is.
And
She,
I just have to say that that has been my experience with so many people in your community that you've
mm,
created because I have, I've coached with Kat Anderson, I've taken
mm,
classes with Jenny Slingerland, I've done,
yes.
I've been able to connect with people and just being able to go to Luann Live and see them in person and, meet Michelle Williams in person
Yeah.
because, I listen to every podcast that she's on and her podcast as well, just because like she's so insightful. And, of course, we're all insecure about our numbers and finances and all of
And
that. I
she's
mean,
so
deep
good
down.
at teaching it, right? Without making you feel her new CFO to go program. You did the CFO to go program with her this past year, didn't you?
I did the light
The light
version,
version.
which is 3 sessions, and I did that soon after Luann Live because, I felt like, okay, I'm in a place now where I kind of understand the nature of my business and, what I offer, but I don't really understand the cash flow situation or,
Mhm.
you know
Projection and
yeah, like, I feel really uncertain about that. Can I pay myself? All these things that are important, when you run a business. And so I signed up with her, and, she said something in our first meeting that reminded me of Luann, our first meeting, which was
Ah,
again like a year apart, connecting the dots about the whole idea of doing standalone site consultations. So kind of teasing that piece out so that,
mhm,
somebody's not necessarily hiring me to rehab their house. They're
right.
hiring me as a first step to help them understand what's important, what kind of trades do I need? What kind of budget am I looking at? How could I phase this? You know, what's sort of
The
a
lay of the land,
strategy?
like, what
Yeah,
am I in
exactly.
for,
That
right?
that I can deliver to them as a document. And I could
Yes.
do this for an interior designer also if they had a project. But it's like I can deliver to them a document that they could then, sort of take as a basis for
Yes.
communicating to all the other people on the team. And she homed in on that and she said, "How much are you charging for that? How long does it take you? How many
Yep.
hours are you spending on it? Kate, do you realize you are sitting on a gold mine?" Like
Yeah.
looks to me like your major profit center right
Yeah.
there. How
That's
many
great.
of these would you have to do in a year to get to your financial goals? And I, just very quickly back of the envelope ran the numbers and it's like
Oh,
I could still do one project a year and these site consultations, which I actually really love doing because
yes,
it's like
yes.
somebody's inviting you into their house to for you to tell them what you would do.
Right,
Like, if this
right.
were my house, this is what I would do. And
Yes, right?
I mean, to me, it's like play. I
Yes.
mean, it's so much fun. And, I write those reports, I turn them around really quickly. And I just, she helped me again realize how much value is in that, because you're giving them your eyeballs to see
Mhm.
this project through. And so that was just, I think that was just in our discovery call. That wasn't even as part of the program. So I'm just telling you, like, these are brilliant people that are in this circle. So I just, it was what I needed to hear at that moment, and it's
Yes.
just, it's like ever since then, it's like I I'm just having so much fun in my business, which is
I
great.
love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my goodness. So the thing is, we're having this big love fest here, but again, you listened to the podcast for many years, and what I'm hearing the message is yes, hire coaches, whoever resonates, wherever your gap is, okay? But there's also people who will spend another 1, 2, 3 years listening. You didn't hire the coaches the first year you started listening, right? So, what are some, can you think of, and I'm putting you on the spot, any other, lessons, ahas, thoughts that you can go back to and say, almost whether I remembered hearing that, not understanding, or remember hearing it, thinking, not me. Remember, you know, like, or just an aha through anything come to mind? Because I just think it's
Oh,
so like telling, right?
well, yeah, I mean, again, like, you and I had coached together for a year, and you'd think, like, I would have figured it out at that point. But it's like I mean, in a way, it's kind of like coaching is like rehabilitation, like historic rehabilitation. It's like we hire professionals to help us because these are not things we're born knowing.
Right.
We can read all the books, we can listen to all the podcasts, all of that, but at the end of the day, like, you only know what you know. And so if you're really serious about improving your home or improving your business, like, you have to figure out, okay, well, what kind of expertise do I need? And so, I was sitting there in the audience at Luann Live, and Rachel's on the stage, just being so buoyant and just like,
Amazing.
but also so like, um, hardcore and clear.
Yes.
It's
Take no prisoners. This
this
is
is
the
not
real
fluff.
stuff. Right. Yes.
I just remember at a certain point, she turned around and she just looked the whole audience dead in the eye and said, "Be the damn thing." And her point, I mean, I'm sure everybody interpreted that differently, but to me, it was like she was looking right at me and saying, like, "You, Kate Wood, step up, be the historic preservation expert in the room, and just take action, do it now." And
That's it.
so it just gelled everything to me. And then
I love it.
I had gone to Luann Live, doing research, of course, on all the
The
speakers,
speakers, yeah.
just kind of, okay, I want to meet so and so and talk to them and talk to them. But the MC was Heather Hansen,
Mm.
and I was not familiar with Heather's work, but I went and I listened to. She's written a few books. I listened to her books. She has a podcast. I listened to her podcast, and her whole approach is, it's about self advocacy, learning to advocate for yourself and what you believe in, and understanding, what it is that you believe, like believing in yourself.
Mhm.
And that just resonated so much with me, because again, advocacy, like, advocacy is a language I understand.
Yes.
And to be like, okay, I I need to learn to advocate for myself as the historic preservation expert. I'm not advocating for a building. I'm not, I'm advocating for all those things simultaneously. But first and foremost, I have to bring this energy to my projects that is, very, that's 80% of
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
I am doing is really motivating people, giving them information in a way that's clear, that gets them excited about projects. Because, you know, any design project, whether it's an old house, new house, whatever, it's a slog. I mean, and there's
Yes.
so much that comes up that you can't begin to predict. But I think especially with old houses, you open up a wall and you never know what you're going to find. And it's like,
You
I
could
think
find a family living back there for
I
crying
know
out loud.
family of something, but it's like I think that even the most the best client in the world, you can see like they people can get discouraged and
Yes.
begin to lose heart, and suddenly this is taking so long, and the bills are racking up, and I can't find somebody to do the plaster work and all of this, and I think being the positive force in a situation like that and being like, it's okay, been here before, this is how we're going to handle this. We've got a plan.
Yeah.
We're going to make a few adjustments here. We've got a great team, and
Yeah.
I think bringing that experience to it and kind of learning how to recognize the fact that that is my magic that I
Yes.
can bring to a project. And Heather really helped me kind of dig into that and understand where that comes from, and that is more important really at a certain point than knowing all of the codes and all of the you know the history of construction methodology and all of the things that you can look those things up in books, but having
You could. The rest of us would be like, wait,
well,
Siri,
yeah,
where is it?
I there are certain things like I always remember like you have to know where to look or who to call. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
part of the experience that I bring. But I think you know, not feeling like I have to that my entire worth is based on how much I know. It's also just that energy that I bring to projects. So I think that that's something that any interior designer can run with that idea, because again, you can look up the specifications for something, you can all of that, but I think it's kind of believing in your own magic, like what it is that you bring to a project that no one else can. Um, and I think I also remember somebody said in that session, um, it wasn't Rachel, it was somebody else who said, what do you do that can't be Googled? You know,
Right.
it's you can't Google how would Kate Wood do this.
Right.
You
Right.
can Google something and get a very generic answer, or maybe a very specific answer that doesn't actually apply to your situation. But it's that whole picture of the knowledge, the experience, the connections, that's all part of that, very that magical sense that I think all of us who are kind of at the top of our game can
Yes.
bring to projects.
Well, and the thing that I want to say here is while what you do might seem to many of us highly technical, highly based on like, true education on, many, many years of working in historic preservation, right? The thing is that it is exactly the same for a professional seasoned interior designer. It's like,
Absolutely.
you're coordinating electrical and HVAC and, windows and, molding details, but they're coordinating, the paint and the textures and the flooring and the lighting and all of the things. And the way you just described all of that there, Kate, is I need for everyone who thinks that AI is competition for them or that clients that want to source their own sofa is a problem for the design industry to go back and listen to what you just said there. It was too much for me to be able to repeat, but the essence of it is literally exactly analogous to what an interior designer does in their lane on the interiors. It is not easy to know what scale that sofa should be versus the two chairs that sit next to it versus the fireplace that sits across from it. It might feel like it's easy. It might feel like you can look at it and just get a feel, or maybe how to actually do it by the numbers, by the drawings, but the rest of us don't. we will put the wrong size sofa in with the wrong color, paint with the wrong color rug. Like, and it is understanding that value, that it is not the product that you bring, it's the way you put the product together. And so it was that same thing for you. It's not that you bring the plumber and the GC that knows how to make the moldings that are 100 years old. It's that you bring the knowledge of what is the actual molding that should be in this house. Like the GC, like you said, he's going to go Google 1910 molding. Okay, great. Is that all houses in 1910, or is that just houses in the Hudson Valley, or is that the houses in Utah? Like, it's not Googleable. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? It is to a point, but to your point, are you 100% sure? And so it's the same thing with design. Like, and what I heard you also say, it's, you know, it's when you said that you were talking about it's not about what you said it's just not what you know. You were talking about it's not just what I know. It's when the project is feeling hard and difficult. It's being the advocate for yourself, as you mentioned, through learning through Heather, and bringing your magic. What I heard is, in my language, what I've said all these years is bring your leadership,
Mm.
right? It's like, I'm imagining you're working with an interior designer and the client and the GC and the architect and all the trades. And all of a sudden, like you said, a wall comes down and it's like chaos because nobody expected to find, I don't know, 14 fireplaces behind the wall. Now you can't run heating. This is the kind of things you told me happens. It's like you open up a wall and now you can't run heating behind it because there's concrete and brick and all the other crap, right? But like, you're the person, you're the leader. Like, here's going to be plan B. So now the designer can breathe. The designer can have a consult with you and figure out what plan B is. And the designer can go back to their client and say, don't you worry, sweetie. Kate's got our back. We are all working together. She knows the vision that you want. She knows our parameters on what we're going to do. But we know you, both Kate and I know you want your house to be accurate. So she's going to lead us through this murky water right here, right? Like, that's what it is. It's like your magic is being the leader when things are good, but when things are not good. And every designer needs to be that same leader, even when historic preservation is not involved, right?
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
you could be building a regular home in a regular street with all modern conveniences with windows that tilt in, and things can still go wrong. And your magic, to your words, is to be your own advocate and know and let everyone know involved that you got this, that
Mhm.
this is not sourcing on Pinterest and buying on Wayfair. This is a professional leading this process.
Right. And again, to your point, this is where AI, can only help you to a point. I mean,
Right.
AI is just sort of lazy Googling. I mean, it's
Right.
like
That's a different version of Googling, right?
yeah.
It's
I
like,
mean,
yeah,
it's just feeding you information that then you still have to figure out how to interpret.
right.
And I think, you know, preservation, I think, is similar to interior design in that there is a very healthy population that feels that they can just DIY it. And in
Yes.
fact, believes that they should DIY it. Oh, I don't need to hire a professional for that. So maybe those aren't our ideal clients. I let people DIY preservation all day. I might judge them based on what they do, but I think again, people come to me when they realize that DIY is not for them. And it's not
Yeah.
because they just don't have the time. Oh, I don't have the time. I could do this if I wanted to, but I don't have the time.
There's a knowledge that's missing.
People recognize that no, I have bought this 150, 200-year-old house that is still 99% intact. It has survived all of these years. I'm not going to be the one to screw it up. And
Yeah.
so to me, I get so excited. I mean, all houses make me excited, but I walk into, a house that's basically a time capsule from, circa 1800 or something like that.
Yes.
And I get all, I just get giddy.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
to me, I mean, some people would walk into that and be like, what a dump. Like, I
Right.
just
Right.
think,
Right.
like, tear it down, start over, fine. Those are not my people.
Right.
But for the people who look at that and they get tingly also, but they just don't know kind of what to do with that,
Yes.
then we are kindred spirits.
The thing is, they have the awareness, and this is the analogy and where we have to go as professionals in the industry. The client that has the awareness of their own passion for something, of their own standards for excellence in that something being done, and they understand that there's a professional across the aisle that can lead them through this project, right? Because it's no different. Like, listen, I never forget, this is going back what, almost 28, 30 years ago, when Vin and I built a new house at one point in time. There was a house on our street. Now, our house was like a 5,000 square foot house that we built. There was a house on our street that was like a 12,000 square foot house. Okay. It was objectively like, let's just say, we used to call it the municipal building. That's what it looked like. It looked like a municipal building. It was like, oh, yeah, that's not actually a school at the end of our street. That's someone's home. Right. And the thing is that they didn't work with quality professionals to build the house. The people who own the house, lovely people, they'll never hear the podcast. I'm not at all worried about it, but lovely people. But their profession was that they were real estate developers of strip malls. And so you kind of got it. Like, when they were like, oh, we designed it ourselves. We're like, no crap. Like, that's so unbelievable right there. That is so hard to believe. Right. And the thing is, they loved it. They got it. I promise you, we went to their house one time. They invited the whole neighbor. Literally every stick of furniture was from Costco. Every stick of furniture from Costco. There's a place for Costco, folks. I'm not, knocking Costco, but it is not in a living room that is 40 by 60 with marble floors and crystal chandeliers, right?
Right.
Like, it was. And so my point is that for the person who respects the professional and understands they also have that shared passion for their home, to whether it's brand new built today or built in 1850, that's your client, guys. That's your client, not the one who thinks I can build a house on my own and I can decorate it on my own, because those things are true. Those things are true. They don't always turn out good, but they can be done.
Well, and I'll also drop this other little nugget, which is, and not to get too much into the technical weeds, but there are financial incentives out there for historic
Oh, that's right.
preservation.
I remember you
So,
telling me.
if it's a home, some states have homeowner tax credits for historic rehabilitation. There's some process and paperwork and bureaucracy that's on top of, your average zoning or building permit process. I help navigate those things. There are also income producing historic rehab tax credits. So if you're doing a rental or, some other kind of, you know, uh, commercial building, that's a whole other process. So I have experience with that. So, it's not that, there's some myths about historic preservation, that it's always more time consuming, that it's always more expensive, and that, there aren't people to do the work, all this. I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way, that
Right.
if you plan your projects right, you can actually come out pretty well on them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that it's worth investigating what your resources are, and restraining yourself from DIYing if if you can, because you're gonna be happier with the outcome.
Right, right, right. And the thing is, you're based in the New York metro area, but if designer has got a project anywhere, wherever,
Well,
you're on call, right?
I totally am. I do phone calls all the time. I am happy anybody who wants to get on my calendar and schedule a phone call just to bat ideas around. I am
But even to hire
totally.
you as the other professional on the stool on their projects out of state, right?
Absolutely. And I did actually, very exciting, get my first request to do a consultation project in California.
Oh,
And it
fun.
would be 100% remote, because we figured it out with technology. I mean, there's so much that you can do.
Interesting.
So that's sort of a new avenue that I'm exploring right now.
Interesting.
But that said, yes, I am very open to working with designers and their clients wherever they are, just to, help give some guidance when it comes
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
historic preservation.
I love it. I love it. So good. I just love your ability to look, you and I are cut from the same cloth. I always have coaches. I've always got people in my ear. I know that I'm not the smartest person in the room. And you know what? If I've got a problem and I need to figure it out, my first thought is, who else has done this? Who else can help me? Why do I have to sit here and invent the wheel? And the ahas, it's the other person looking. We're so close in our head to what we're doing. It's the other person looking and going, hello, come on back. Hello, come on back. Hello. And you're missing the gold here. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and we do have to hear it sometimes more than a couple of times before the light bulb goes off.
Yeah, the light bulb, yeah, it for me, it's just gotten brighter and brighter, and then there have been
Yeah.
this moment that is just flashed, and
Yeah.
that's sort of when I feel like I take it to the next level.
Yeah.
But I no, I mean, I'm really happy with where my business is now, but again, in a year, who
Oh,
knows?
yeah. You're going to keep creating it. You're going to keep creating it and reinventing it. But the thing is, to put the bow on it, is you're spiraling up in your expertise and your specialization, as opposed to when I met you, you were not spiraling the drain, but you were trying to figure out, I think you said earlier, how to be everything to all things in the project. And as opposed to Rachel's example of when Trav was in the accident,
Yeah.
she needed the single best hand surgeon in the world. And she was willing to put him in a plane with a medical airplane to get him to that.
That's such a powerful story.
That's right.
I mean,
And the
that's
universe
amazing.
just intervened that he happened to be in the same hospital that the number one hand surgeon in the world was in. But she wasn't putzing around with number 5, number 25, number 50, right? And so it's that specialization. And that's where I see you when I love the way you say the light keeps getting brighter and the flashes of light bump you to the next level. Because that's what I've observed over the last year. I guess it's almost a year since we've worked together, but the year that we did work together and the year following it, where it's just we also use the word niching up to your superpower. It's
Mm,
really so clear that you're
yeah,
doing that. And that's
yeah.
awesome. I love it.
Well, yeah, no, but it's been an incredible journey, and I'm just so happy to be, um, you know, I mean, Luann, I just have to say, you're just such a great mentor, and you were even when I didn't know you, I just heard your voice in my ears. So it's like this is like I've appeared in the pages of my favorite book right now, and I'm actually a character in a story that is, has been so meaningful to me. So thank you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's an actually extremely special way to describe that, because I just went to books that I just feel like I really know the people, and it's like, oh yeah, I'm in that book now. That's
Yeah,
very special,
yeah,
Kate.
yeah.
Ah,
Well, we're
you're
both readers, so.
yes.
I
Well,
do want
thank
to
you.
mention,
Yes,
actually,
please.
I want to mention that I have a free download for people
Oh, tell
if
me about
they
it.
would like to access it. I put it together especially for interior designers, and I call it Worth Preserving, a guide to identifying historic character for interior designers. So
Love
it's
it.
it's kind of it's a checklist, basically, that I've pulled together from resources that are out there that, not everybody knows exist, but I know exists. And I've
Mm,
condensed it into a document that an interior designer can take a look at and kind of understand how it applies to projects. And they can use that as a resource. If they still want more information, of course, they should reach out to me directly. But it's just a way that I can kind of give back to this community that has been so special to me, and hopefully, people can use it in ways that are helpful in their businesses.
that's awesome. Is it an easy link, or should we put it in the show notes, or do you want to say it?
It is one of those crazy links, so let's put it in the show notes.
Ginger bean jumby dot
Yeah,
62
exactly.
95.
Bitly.
Don't get it, but, you know what you're talking about. Okay. Well, that's awesome. We will definitely put that link in the show notes. I appreciate your doing that because I think it's helpful, and I also think that any designer listening that might also share this sort of passion that you have, but recognize, "Hey, you know what? Bringing you in complements what I'm doing. You're gonna stay out of the other lane, they'll stay out of this lane." But just to go I think it probably will serve those little ahas like I had with the windows and knowing that that wasn't a shack, it was actually a structure.
And yes, obviously the street goes both ways. I mean, I am always looking for talented interior designers to help on my projects. So,
Yes.
if people, again, it's so important just to build your network
Yes.
and commune with like-minded people because, and I would love to discover some of them out there. I hope they're listening.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Kate. I appreciate you so much. It was great connecting again.
Thank you, Luann.